the pillars begin in the inner landscape. So the first four pillars are all about the inner landscape. And we start, as I say in this chapter, we start at the beginning with our relationship to spirit, right? Because it's just so key for us and so central for us. Every chapter begins with a story. So the whole book begins with a story, which is the prologue, right? After the forewords is there's a prologue, which is introduces us to this moment of awakening that our heroine has. And you may have had your own moment of awakening at some point. And then I share the beginning of the introduction about this awakening that I had with Proctor, right? So stories are absolutely vital to how we know who we are and how we know the world that we live in. And so I really use a lot of storytelling in the book. So everything begins with a story. Each one has its own little introduction that helps us to have a little taste of what it's like when you've actually embodied the key themes of the pillar. So here we begin with exploring the web of life. And then right after that, there's a statement in every chapter that says, we humans are spiritual beings. And then we humans are emotional beings and we humans are physical beings, right? Is recognizing these different, that we are multidimensional beings and we have these different ways of understanding who we are. And so that's what the first four pillars are about, is really understanding ourselves as an expression of the all that is, that we are not separate from the God force, if you will, or the divine source energy. We are actually an expression of that. This is a key part of the yogic traditions, as well as what we might think of as kind of contemporary spirituality is. And of course, indigenous cultures around the world have already known this, which is that we're all deeply interconnected. Every chapter ends with a part that says your turn, and we'll look at one of those in a minute. So one way that you can use this book is you could just kind of read through the whole thing, and then you could come back later to the your turn sections, and you could do the assessment and you could respond to the reflection questions, and you can kind of work with the material that way. Or you can read it more slowly and pause whenever it says pause, notice how you feel, take a few breaths, consider this piece of, whatever it was that I shared, this teaching, how does that relate to you? You could pause at every moment and really write in a journal for that. And you could pause at the end of the pillar and really work with that assessment and think about what that means for you and where you are on the spectrum of expression and where you want to be. And if there are new capacities you want to develop. So there's really different ways you could do this. So this is co-creating with the flow of life. And then emotional wisdom. Learning how to take command of our emotions is really vital. And it's not about suppressing them. It's about understanding them better and building our own awareness of how we get activated emotionally, what we can do with that, and how we can sequester emotions and hold them until it's the appropriate time for us to really work with them. So there's a lot in here about understanding ourselves as emotional beings, because what is emotion but energy in motion, right? And we know from our own life experience that emotions are a key inheritance that we have. It's a birthright. It's a blessing. And if we don't know how to have emotional wisdom and we don't know how to take command of our emotions, we can also be dangerous if we don't know how to work with that. So then pillar 3 is vitality, embodiment, and our connection to the living world. And I really like to present to people that your relationship with your body is your most intimate and longest term relationship. in our technological society, a lot of times we act like we don't even have a body. We're just in our heads. We're working with computers or devices. We're trying to ignore the fact that, our back hurts or our neck hurts or whatever. We're uncomfortable where we're sitting. We just ignore all of that and act like we're just this head, right? And yet this incredible structure that we have, 70 trillion cells, half of which are bacterial, it's a miracle. The human body is truly a miracle. It does not make us better than other species. It makes us able to do a lot of things that only we can do, but it doesn't make us better, even though we've kind of taken that in from the overculture. So we want to be strong and vital in our physical form, and we want to be in our bodies, like we want to embody, right? We don't want to be living like out here somewhere. And then there's this connection, because what is this body in certain ways? But it's a sack of water with minerals in it, really, right? Animated by life force and bacteria. And so we are literally made from the elements of this beautiful planet and of the living world. So what is our relationship to this incredible form that we have? Um, and then taking command of our energetic, our structure, right? And learning how to do practices like we just did is a super beneficial way for you to start to understand more about your own energy field and learning how to work with it. So if we look at this in relation to human design shows us places where we need to decondition. It helps us see every aspect of the human design system has that spectrum of expression. I like to use the three different aspects: the awakened and empowered, the shadow, and the disempowered. And so every aspect of the human design system has that. And as you get to know your human design more, you can learn what those pieces are. And it can say, hey, you've been kind of with the gate 10, which is the gate of self-love. You've been kind of stuck in the blame game. And how do you then learn how to instead really develop your own self-love and support other people in their self-love? Just as an example. But human design doesn't tell us how to do that, right? It kind of goes, decondition here, evolve here, but it doesn't tell us how to do it, which is why the energy practices are so important, because they actually give us the tools that we need to then release our attachment to the old ways of expressing parts of our human design, and also our emotions, right? And our beliefs. I mean, it's just all these different layers, right? And then harnessing that energy so that we can build our energy so we can become radiant and magnetic. Because the more radiant and magnetic we become, the more, if you're a generator type of any kind, the more you'll have things coming to you that you get to respond to. If you're a projector, the more you'll get invitations. The more, if you're a manifester, you'll just be fueled by this energy. And if you're a reflector, it will give you more command of this incredibly open chart that you have, so that you can then build and direct your energy where you choose to. The next chapter is the sadhana practice. And I want to just underscore that so many of the things that get talked about in those first four pillars, you can actually work with and practice by having a daily date with the divine. And there's a lot of different possibilities that are in the sadhana chapter. And of course, you're welcome and invited and encouraged to make it your own in any way that will be appealing to you and for you to actually participate. And if you are someone who has had challenges with spiritual practice in the past, whether that comes from your religious upbringing or from the way people have imposed different things on you, I really want to encourage you to develop this where you're really just taking time and you're meeting your inner being. You're getting to have a space that's quiet where you can connect. And there's all these different ways of doing that. Then the last four pillars are, and the pillar five is the fulcrum point where and we talked about this last time we were talking about purpose and contribution, because purpose has to do with the self and with how you feel. And then contribution is how you move out from this now, strong, confident, developed part of yourself. You've developed your power within with those first four pillars. Now you're able to really lean into purpose and then contribute out into the world. So that's what pillar five is about. It's kind of like, okay, why am I here? What is it that lights me up? What draws me forward? And it may or may not be something that's defined in your human design chart. So just know that that's true. But it's important for you to develop that sense of what matters to you. Pillar six is how do we communicate with each other? This is very, very dependent on the earlier pillars, particularly pillar number two about emotional wisdom, because it's when we're communicating with others, we're negotiating, we're navigating, we're expressing, we're receiving. This is where the level of our emotional wisdom really shows itself. There's one friend of mine said, she was like, like if you don't do your inner work and you don't learn your emotional wisdom, you'll do that in community. And it's really messy when you do that. You know what I mean? So try to avoid, do your work. And it doesn't mean that we don't sometimes get reactive or we don't get triggered when we're communicating or when we're in a community. The question is what do we do when that happens, right? And how do we work with that? So the chapter on communication that connects gives us tools and practices and perspectives that help us to go, oh, okay. And this includes sequestering emotions, like I was talking about. Like something happens, how can you hold on to that until you have the time and the energy and the focus and attention that you need to actually process whatever that emotion is without allowing it to kind of flame out at other people, or allowing you to withdraw and collapse too much either, right? Because you still want to be present, you still want to be engaged, you still want to be able to have good communication and that communication that connects, even when things have gotten challenging sometimes on the inside. Pillar seven is about mutually beneficial collaborations. And it's really like, what are we doing with each other, right? What are we doing? And is it benefiting everyone involved? I think we've really been in a time where we've seen that a lot of collaborations are not mutually beneficial. People get seduced into, coerced into agreements around collaborating, working. This happens in work situations a lot, right? Where you're just like, okay, this is what I have to do, and this is the way I have to do it. And yet, is it really benefiting everybody involved? And so I don't think we have that much focus on this in culture. And so it's a new frontier for us to be looking at how do we really make win-win-win. So there's all the parties and there's the living world, right? That needs to be taken into account when we're talking about mutually beneficial collaborations. We can't leave all the other species and the ecosystems out of this equation anymore, because this is part of what has made it possible for us to do things like pollute the water and pollute the air. I mean, no other species pollutes the communal water supply. It's wacky that we do some of these things, right? So it's like, how can we create collaborations that also collaborate with our ecosystems? And then, of course, that leads into compassionate sovereign stewardship, which is where we are growing ourselves into our full capacity as a species. And each one of us has our own story of that and our own experience of that. And then, being able to be like, okay, what is my piece as I take more responsibility for the well-being of the collective and the well-being of the planet? What's my piece in that, right? Because there's no way to take it all in, right? And you don't even want to try. You want to find your piece of the pie. And there's lots of examples in this chapter about that. This last chapter, What Now, What's Next, is where you get to bring in, reflect on your learning question, which ideally has kind of guided you through your experience. You get to bring all your self-assessments together. And then you get to look at what project might you want to create for yourself on the inner landscape, right? Like, for example, I did a reading for a woman yesterday who is highly intuitive, and she's been forcing herself to do a form of work that she doesn't want to do and she doesn't like. And she didn't realize how intuitive she was, or that she's really not designed to do that kind of work. And so she's put on weight because she's done a lot of comfort eating, which is what we do a lot of times when we're trying to make ourselves do something we don't really want to do. And so if if I were working with her, I might say, well, so maybe pillar number 3, working with your relationship with your body and looking at this habit you've created around comfort eating, not to make yourself bad or wrong, but just to look at it and to say, is that serving me? And if it is, how can I make it more beneficial for myself by tweaking it? And if it's not, how do I change it? So that could be an example of an inner landscape project, would be looking at that piece. And of course, it's going to be pillar 2 too, right? Because it's going to be about your emotional wisdom and it's going to be about your physical vitality. Yeah. And then the outer landscape, right? Like outer world. What might you want to do? Looking at how do I make a different kind of contribution? What does really matter to me? Where can I, connect with a community of purpose around something that matters to me so that I can engage with that? So I know for me here, there's an institute, a research-based institute that is working with understanding the ecosystems here. They're exploring using cultural burning because I live in the place where there are wildfires, and part of the reason we have such devastating wildfires is we haven't been doing burning in the landscapes the way indigenous people did for probably thousands of years. And so we've had a real issue with that. So they're exploring that, but they're also tracking the behavior of like all the bears that live there and the mountain lions. And they're learning a lot about the ecosystem and what can we as human beings do to support this ecosystem so that it can recover, right? There's more black bears, there's more mountain lions, there's more of all of the different animals that kind of have gotten pushed out of the places where we live. So that's something I care about, and it's something I participated in, and I will continue to participate in because that matters to me. So that's an example of an outer landscape project. I'm looking at becoming a naturalist. They have a naturalist program. I think it's 10 Saturdays, right? So I'm looking at doing that. They also have a stewardship program, which they won't offer in 2024. So, that's just, again, an example of something that you could do, but it could be completely different depending on what it is that you're interested in. And then this epilogue here is another story of where we've gotten to by the end of the book. So I wanted to just walk you through it and to say, this can be, if you want to, it can just be your own personal program that you do on your own. One thing that we will have by mid-January, fingers crossed, but planning on having by mid-January, but we'll have by the end of January for sure. But anyway, is a journal, a companion journal that goes with the book, so that all the reflection questions will be in here. The assessments will be in here. So you can literally get something that'll be the same size that you can use, and you could literally create your own program for yourself doing that. So that's one way you could really use the book to help you take more command of your life. And then we will have the Explorers Club, and I'm going to give you an update on that. If you're like, you know what, I really want to explore and work on this with other people. So one of the things I realized talking to you all last week is that you're really at the beginning of reading this book. Like you're really at the beginning of the journey. And so I'm going to extend the time that you have as early adopters to get that early adopter rate into January. We need to update the page. So I will send it out to you when it's all updated. The other thing is I went back and forth on this, and I hope that this is going to land great for everybody that it's right for, which is that Explorers Club is going to be 10 months now, because each of the chapters, each of the pillars is so rich. I think that if we did 2 pillars a month, you would feel really rushed. We're going to spend a month on each pillar, and including the beginning chapter and the ending chapter. And there's an extended payment plan. I'm just trying to make this as accessible for you if you want to do that and you want to work together. It'll officially start in February. I think we have a kickoff jumpstart call like the very last Tuesday in January. And then we'll really start in February. And we'll take July off. So we'll go February, March, April, May, June, take July off, and then come back August, September, October, November, December. So it'll go through 2024, but we won't meet every single month. I wanted to give you more time to actually read the book and kind of get into it and see, is this something that I want to commit to as a path for myself, right? So that you can make a really informed decision for yourself if you want to come in to the into the Explorers Club.